Hmm.
This is an interview with Mahmud Nestman, longtime Subud member, currently a regional helper in the Fraser Valley area of Canada. Uh, Mahmud, can you just start by telling us how you found and came into Subud?
Well, first of all, my upbringing was as a Catholic, very, very devout Catholic. And that was my spiritual beginning. And and it kind of you got given the message like we were the chosen ones, you know. The way to heaven is to be a Catholic. Um, and I was a dutiful Catholic until I was 15, and then I lost my faith. One day I woke up and it's like I no longer had faith. I no longer had a strong identity as a Catholic. I was depressed for 3 days. The first time I remember being depressed, really. And then after that, no more depression. And but after that, I was looking for alternative way of living, more of a counterculture rather than the normal culture. And uh, and in that process, I met Bardolph Paul. And at that point, he wasn't Bardolph, he was Jim. Uh, and we discovered we had similar interests in music, and we were both sort of searching. My sort of spiritual longing had been awakened again. And yeah, we were searching for a spiritual path. Uh, and then our lives went a bit separate ways for a while. And after a year or so, when I was, what, 23, I guess, 23, Bardolph and I met up, and I noticed something different about him. Uh, he was quieter, he was more relaxed, less driven. And I commented that. I said, Bardolph, you've changed. He said, oh, really? How so? So I said, just what I shared with you. He said, oh. I said, well, what do you attribute this to? He says, oh, maybe it's this spiritual group I'm part of. And I said, what's that? He said, it's called Subud. I said, well, tell me about it. He said, no, I can't. I don't understand it. And that was very unusual because Bardolph's very bright and very always very articulate. So that really got my attention even more. So he said, but I got this book. Do you want to read it? It was a book, What is Subud by Edward Van Heen. And so I read it and I thought, yeah, this seems to be what I'm looking for. And so I became an applicant shortly after reading that book and was opened on Good Friday, April the 8th, 1966. And that was interesting, being opened on Good Friday, being brought up as a Catholic. And uh, and in my opening, I would say what stood out for me was somehow I felt natural. I felt natural inside and moving, I felt natural. And I couldn't recall ever feeling that way before. So it wasn't a dramatic experience, but it was something different that really had an impact. And so that was Good Friday. I woke up on Saturday and I felt from inside, I need to go and make my confession, Catholic Church, and go to Mass on Sunday. And a voice in me says, what are you doing with this? What's it, are you sure you want to do this? And yeah, I have to do this. So I went, made my confession, went to Mass. That was the first time in 9 years. And in that mass, I had a sense of like the essence, the essence of the power of God in the mass. And I didn't have ever had any kind of sense of that before when I was practicing as a Catholic. Uh, and so then I started going to mass every day, basically. And so that was significant. Also, my wife, Fatija, she was opened a week after me, and what happened was either the night I was open, of the day I was open, or the next day when I was sleeping, I had a sense of incredible intense energy in my sleep. And when I woke up, I told her that, and I said, and she said, "Well, I did too. I had that same intense energy in my sleep." I said, "Okay." So then she was open a few days after that. Um, However, we had a challenge because she had a new job. She had graduated from university. I hadn't. And we had a job she had a job outside Vancouver, about 5 hours. And that was 2 months after we were open. No group there. So we kind of, okay, let's see if we can experience the Latihan without a group. And we were able to, which was good. Um, and something else was it was significant was Bardolph Paul, who was going to university in Lebanon at that point, started sending me puartas, started sending me material, Bapak's talks. And in reading those talks, I was amazed because when I read Bapak's talk, I feel very, very peaceful, deeply peaceful inside. And I'd done a lot of reading in my life up to that point, avid reader. I'd never read anything that gave me a sense of deep inner peace. So I found that to be quite fascinating and confirming in terms of my experience. And the I continued to go to mass up there where we were living. There was a Catholic church. And then I think how long was it? April, maybe 2.5 months, 2 months, 2.5 to 3 months after I was open, I started to experience this anxiety. And and I was just doing my best just to surrender, you know, and but something was trying to come into my awareness, and I was very anxious. And after about a week of this growing, increasingly intense anxiety, finally it came into my awareness what it was. And it was fear that I picked up along the way of being a Catholic. And the fear was, uh, you know, you are on a occult path. This Subud is an occult path. This is just going to lead you to darkness. The only way to your salvation is through the Catholic Church. You must end your relationship with this practice of Subud. So that's what I was afraid to know. And I just kind of, I could feel the Latihan though. Even with that anxiety, even with all this stuff, I could feel the Latihan. And I just kind of stayed with it. I mean, but these thoughts were there for 2, 3 days. And then I think on the third day, uh, these thoughts started up. And then I had this experience of this pop in both my ears, just a strong pop.
Hmm.
And that was it. Anxiety left, those voices left. I never had any of that anymore. It ended. And so I thought, wow, this this must be Subud that's working. Um, and I continued to go to mass. I had nothing left. No, I'd met a few ex-Catholics who had residual anger and having felt they'd been conditioned in some way and fear-based and that sort of thing. But I had nothing like that. I had nothing negative at all left, and still don't. And continue to go to mass. I continue to go to mass. So uh, I didn't see any conflict.
Okay, good.
Um, and so we were away for what, a year and a half before we came back to Vancouver. The other thing that happened when we were away was like, what am I going to do? What's my work? I've had all these odd jobs. I have half a year of university. What's my work? And I had no idea. But I had that question for maybe 3 weeks. And then I thought, I like, I've done a lot of reading, and I like autobiographies and biographies, and I like reading about people. And in novels I read, I'm really into the characters. And I thought, well, maybe I should be working with people. It was that simple. It wasn't any bright light or anything. Maybe I should be working with people. So I wrote to the helpers in Vancouver. Could they test that? They wrote back and said, yeah, that's right. Uh, and then there were two universities that I had a choice to go to, So I wrote to them again, which university should I go to? They wrote back, thank you. That's the university I went to. So I really trusted the helpers, and they were actually a great group of men. At first, I was a little frustrated with them because there were no overtly spiritual people. There were no wise people pontificating in any way. But they were very, very welcoming, very inclusive, very humble group, and probably 5 or 6 very strong helpers at that time in Vancouver.
Which group was this?
Subud, Vancouver.
Vancouver, okay.
Yeah. Um, so then we left where we were living so I could get going to university and get my degree, which I did. But so I sort of went summer school, went to, all the semesters and got it in 3 years. And we also had a child then. My wife wasn't working, and so that's the next question was, what kind of job am I going to have? Where am I going to get a job? And and something came to me. I had applied for one job after I graduated. I think it was a probation officer or something. Didn't get it. Never heard back. But I saw this advertisement in the newspaper, basically for the opening of this new treatment center for disturbed adolescents. And basically, I could apply. You had to write a 10-page autobiographical uh, document as part of your application process. So I did that, got an interview, was hired, and then I was part of a group of young people. I think 90% of us were under 30, 27 of us, and we were going to, and I think only 2 people had ever really worked with adolescents. And here we are. We had this brand new facility, huge facility with sort of the cottages for with the kids be living in. huge gymnasium, swimming pool, craft center, classrooms, supervision setup. I mean, here we were, a bunch of young, young kids being handed this. So that, and I felt a little like a stranger in a strange land because everything was being talked about in psychological language, psychological terms. There was no mention of spirituality really. And I'd been in Subud for this was 1969, so I'd been in Subud for 2.5 years, a little more. And my orientation was the Latihan. And I had and you might say it had taken hold within me too. It was there. That sense of the vibration of the Latihan was with me. That's kind of was like my North Star in a way. And so here I am, and I felt, wow, will I ever fit into this? But I did. And uh, and also, even though the approach, the medical approach didn't include spirituality, a lot of these young people were interested in spirituality. Uh, and But anyway, I basically moved up the ranks pretty quickly until after 3 years I was there, I was the director of staff development there. And did that altogether. I was there 13 years. Now, in those 13 years, 50 people who worked there came into Subud. So um, I guess I had a bit of an influence. And the and many of them became very, very strong, committed members, still are actually. They're no longer young people. But so the and I was kind of there was various disciplines there working together. There was medical doctors, there were psychiatrists, there were social workers, there were psychologists, and then there were mostly what I was a counselor. And I won't get into the approach, but it was a very radical approach, which and included complete equality in terms of men and women. The equal number of women were hired as men, which I doubted at first. How are these women going to cope with some of these adolescent men who, could be maybe pretty rough, but in many ways they were more successful than the men a lot of the time. Um, so I was kind of like a bridge between these various disciplines. Decisions were having to be made all the time in terms of treatment and differences arose sometimes in the disciplines. But I kind of was like a bridge between the various disciplines. Uh, you know, and but I think I'll stop there for a minute. I mean, I have a story that an experience that I will share, but maybe I've moved ahead now I left that job in 1983. So, but I think maybe go back to when we came back to Vancouver and met Bapak for the first time, 1968. Maybe I could share a bit about that.
So how was that experience?
Well, I've watched many of your interviews, and I watched the interview with Bardolph Paul, and he mentions this visit of Bapak. Um, it was very meaningful for me and very challenging and an incredible test of faith. Bapak arrived, and I hadn't met Bapak before, and with Bapak came a lot of people from LA. That's where Bapak had been before. So a lot of American brothers and sisters came. And I was the vice chair. Bardolph Paul was the chair of the group, and I was in charge of all accommodation. So the first part was getting everything set up for Bapak and his party, and then attending to, particularly to the American brothers and sisters coming in, checking in. And that first afternoon, when people are checking in, I went up in an elevator with some people in the elevator, and there were three guys standing at the back of the elevator. I just looked at them and I saw one of them. I was seeing with a way I'd never seen before. I said, he's not in Subud. He's not in Subud. And he was doing Latihan, and he was, but he's not part of ours. Uh, it was like, uh, and I later felt I was seeing with the eyes of my soul rather than my usual eye. But anyway, Bapak, as usual, he arrives in the afternoon and he's giving a talk that night. And during that talk, suddenly this one man, American brother, very well dressed, I might add, uh, stands up and starts circling the room very purposefully, slowly circling the room. Bapak just keeps on talking. And then this guy suddenly springs to the front and attacks this guy in the front row, this Subud member from Vancouver, starts pounding on him. And one of the helpers tried to pull him off, but the Bapak in a flash was on the down because he was up on a stage. He was down on stage, and Bapak just touched him on the side of the neck, and he just broke down crying, this guy, the attacker. Uh, the guy he attacked was a big man. He was a highly advanced martial artist at his own martial arts school and fairly new Vancouver member. So he wasn't hurt at all. And Bapak asked this man, the other man, the attacker, to come up and sit beside Bapak on the stage. So he did. He looked very smiling as sitting beside Bapak. And Bapak just continued his talk as if nothing happened. It's like nothing had happened. So I mean, you can imagine, like, wow, this is what's happening here. This is Bapak. This is a spiritual brotherhood I'm part of. I don't know about this. Um, anyway, the talk went on, nothing else happened, and then the talk ended and people left. And I had to attend to some things in my role and finish that. And I went out onto, there's the lobby and then a mezzanine area, which for socializing, and everyone was out there, but there was a real buzz going on out there in the mezzanine. And what's going on? Everyone looked so intense. And I looked, what's going on? I said, well, the police are coming. We're getting ready for the police to arrive. What? Why is that? And he said, well, our brother who had attacked someone during the talk showed up during the social time, and someone was walking up from the lobby to the mezzanine, and he just basically went and kicked this guy all the way down to the lobby, down the stairs. Now, this guy, Canadian guy, he also had a black belt in karate. Quite interesting, huh? The instinct of this attacking guy. He picked on two guys who really were sort of could defend themselves. And this guy didn't fight back. The guy he kicked down the stairs, he just kind of rolled with it, you know. But the police came, and that was dealt with. I wasn't involved directly with the police, but so anyway, I went home that night, and man, I didn't know which way was up, I'll tell you. I thought, this is unbelievable. You know, where's that firm, strong? powerful spiritual teacher who wouldn't allow anything like this to happen, right?
Yeah.
In fact, didn't seem to blink an eye. I mean, so anyway, that night I woke up about 3 a.m. and I could smell this fragrance in the room, in our bedroom. Incredible fragrance, just like most beautiful rose I'd ever smelled. I woke up Fatima. I said, Fatima, can you smell this? And she went, oh yeah, yeah. So just this beautiful, beautiful fragrance. So that was interesting. The next morning, Bapak's giving another talk in the morning, and I didn't know what to expect, you know. So Bapak gave this talk, and partway through the talk, I was aware Bapak was lifting everybody's soul up, or through God was lifting it through Bapak. Everybody's soul was getting lifted up. It's unbelievable. And I was just in a state of bliss, just pure bliss. The talk ended, and then I was sitting there. I couldn't really move. I didn't want to move. And after about 5 minutes, I heard over the PA system, will Mr. Nestman please come down to the manager's office right away? Could Mr. Nestman please? So I felt like, oh, the principal is calling me to the office. So I was no longer was in my blissful state. I came back to earth. I went down to the manager and he said, Mr. Nessa, we have a big problem here. Very big problem. And I'm pretty sure it's because of your guru. Really. We had there was an incident, where the police were called in and, one of your party was attacking another one of your members. The uh, the area where your guru was staying, he was staying in a suite, a special suite. The pop machine next to his suite was broken into. Pop was stolen, money was stolen. Mr. Nessman, this hasn't happened in since this hotel has been open. We just can't have it. You have to go talk to your guru. If anything else, the slightest thing happens, we have to ask him and the rest of you to leave. So it's like, oh my good God. Uh, anyway, I contacted Bardolph and I told him what had happened. Bardolph was the chair, I was the vice chair. And he said, well, I'm pretty sure I know who broke into that pop machine. I'll go and talk to him. You go and talk to Babak. Okay. So anyway, Bardolph did talk to this guy, and it was the guy I saw in the elevator. That was the guy that broke into the pop machine. The guy that I said wasn't in Subud. Um, so I went over to Bapak's suite, and Usman, he was the translator then. The door was open, and Usman was sitting there typing, smoking and typing. I walked, I stood up. He didn't even look at me, just kept typing. I walked in, sat on the sofa. Usman just talking, smoking. I mean, typing, smoking. And after there, about 2 minutes, I felt this incredible, total, absolute peace and an understanding with the peace. And the understanding was there's nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. You can leave. So I got up and left. Usman didn't even look up. Uh, Went over to the hotel and someone said, oh, that guy from last night, yeah, he's on his way back to LA. That Bapak asked two helpers from the LA group to take him back. Um, and so the rest of the visit was perfect. And And at the end, when I went to pay our bill with the manager, he said to me, uh, Mr. Nestman, you have been such a wonderful group. Please, please consider us. Any future meetings you want to have, please consider us. We would love to have you back. Absolutely love it. And I'm just sitting there thinking, really? I mean, it was like his memory was erased,
Mhm.
or it certainly wasn't in the front of his mind. And you know, so that was an experience where my faith in Bapak really, really grew. It's like, wow, you can go through things in this, Subud. You can go through some challenging things. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be nice all the time. That things can get broken and they can get fixed. And yeah, so that was my first experience with Bapak, and that was I was all in after that in terms of being a super member.
Quite an experience there.
Quite an introduction. Yeah.
So, did you encounter other experiences with Bapak later on?
Well, I had well, I shook Bapak's hand. I think I don't know, it was that visit of the next year when Bapak said he wanted to shake everybody's hand. So I went up, and there it was, and that I had an experience that other people have shared similar. It's like there was no one there, just like
Sure.
no personality. There was just no subjectivity almost.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting. The I now I had a number of well, I have one highly significant experience with Bob. Testing with him, just but I also had some very significant dreams with Papa. And sort of a different kind of dream than any other dream. It's almost like a vision, a dream vision. Felt like Papa was there, but I wasn't in my conscious mind. Um, so that was 68 when Papa was um, in Vancouver. Um, And then, of course, I went to the World Congress in 70? Yeah. Uh,
The World
in
Congress 71.
71, yeah. And I went to Ramadan in Indonesia, 73. Those are profound experiences, but I wouldn't say it was directly related to Papa. Um, the so in 1979, it was the Toronto World Congress. And a lot of the men stayed up late into the morning. I don't know if you were there then, but we were at the university, and there was a place we could all gather. And during one of those times, I, lost consciousness. Was I asleep? I don't know, but Bapak came and he asked me to open my mouth, and I did. And he took this black glove and put it on his right hand. And then he reached right into my throat and started to pull something out. And the pain was absolutely excruciating. And and I was, my eyes, I was asleep or something. And then I just couldn't take it anymore. And I opened my eyes. And did he get it all? It was like someone was like a stinger of some kind. He pulled out, some poisonous thing there. And he got most of it, if not all of it. So that was something. Um,
That was in a dream.
yeah, yes, but I think he really was there.
It's a pretty interesting dream.
I know. I think I was put out so that he could do that, so that my mind wasn't around, Um, so that was like a blessing, tremendous blessing. I had no pain afterwards. After that, just once I came to. So that was in '79, and in '81. Bapak, that was his last world tour, last world tour, '81, right? And so the last two stops on the tour were Vancouver, second to last, and then LA. And now I was actually in a position there, Subud role, Quechuan counselor for North America. That was a role back then. So I was tested in as the Quechuan counselor for North America. And so on that last world tour, there was what they called a compact council then, rather than a World Subud Council in Sao Paulo. I think it was 5, 6 days, and I was there for that. Then went to New York, New Jersey for Bupak's visit there. We're there for that. Then in Vancouver, of course. And in those other visits, Bapak had tested people. He'd asked people to come up, or he'd asked a helper to come up or something. But I never felt moved to go. I didn't feel right. So here he is in Vancouver, and he asked for two women helpers to come up, and they come up, and then they sit down. And then he asked for two men helpers. And I'm sitting there, and part of me, I could feel I wanted to go up. I thought, no, you can't go up from that plane. You can't go up from any desire to go up. And so no one went up. And Bapak asked again, two helpers, please come up. And I could hear this one from the back of the room. I was right near the front. You can hear these boots walking, boop, boop, boop. And it was a Canadian helper from back east in Ontario. And he was a big guy, another wonderful, incredibly talented, gifted martial artist. I think he was a truck driver but he was a big husky guy. And so when he I saw him going up, I walked up too. So there I was, sort of a slight person, and he was a big husky guy. So Bapak said, okay, asked us our name. And when he looked at me, it was a little chilling. Because he kind of looked at me like I was some kind of a specimen of some kind. He's kind of examining me. Who have we got here? Sort of, right? And certainly humbling. And then he asked us to test. And, he asked me to test, does this person have $5,000 in the bank? Does he have any money in the bank? And I was just pushed back against the wall. And Bapak laughed and kind of acknowledged, this guy kind of acknowledged, hey, that's right, Bapak. And then asked him to test about me. He said, when Mark was criticized, how does he react? Does he react with anger? And so he tested, and Bapak said, well, and he said, well, sometimes Bapak, sometimes he does with, sometimes he's very peaceful with it. Other times, yes, I can get angry, yes. And Bapak, uh, Bapak says 50-50. And he says, yeah, I think Bapak. Bapak looks at me, is that true? And I said, yes, Bapak, that's true. So then he tested for both of us. How should Mahmoud feel about it? His name is Fuad. How did Fuad feel about Mahmoud? And so I just closed my eyes and just was moved. My arms were wide, and I just started walking towards him. I wasn't looking, but apparently he was just standing, but his arms had started open. And so then we just walked and embraced. And were you there then for that, Rahman? Were you there at that?
Say that again.
Were you there for that testing?
Uh, where was it? In
Y-
Vancouver?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
But anyway, apparently people were crying. It was really deeply touching. And then when we sat down, everyone clapped. But that was powerful around criticism. Very powerful. That they Buffett pushed the right button, absolute right button. Because that is hard for me. It still is hard. Not nowhere near as hard as it was, but it sure was to have to be criticized. The next day, Sharif came up to me and said, you know, that testing you did last night, yeah, that made Bapak's day. I just want to let you know that. So that was good to hear that you know, that Bapak got something out of it as well. Um, so that was that. The in terms of actual those two experiences, and the one with it, sitting up. There were a number of there was dreams I had with again, there are dreams with Bapak in them that were very, very helpful. But maybe I'll just share. Uh, I'll share two. One is to do with my work because the place where I had worked for 13 years, 12 years, there'd been harmony, mostly harmony, except that ended when the medical staff wanted to create a locked unit there. We didn't have a locked unit. We didn't even have locks on the doors up until then. Uh, and and the counseling group was against it. Now, and I was a counselor, and for the first time, basically, I felt I couldn't be the bridge. I had to take a stand. And I had to side with my profession, the counselors, because I had the same view. I didn't want to have a locked unit. So anyway, there was a huge political things came out of this, huge struggles, and it ended up with a locked unit. So as soon as that was decided, and the psychiatrists sort of really took over because they were more like consultants because the counselors we were so effective, our group of counselors. And I was seen as one of the two sort of ringleaders of the counselors. I was one of the leaders. And so I was basically, my job ended. They couldn't fire me. I was a union member, a government employees union, but they stripped it. They took everything away from me. I had created two training programs for counselors that were basically uh, you call approved by the Department of Mental Health, Government Department of Mental Health, British Columbia, and did other things there too. And so all that basically that was taken away. I had a lovely office looking out mountains in the background, and no, you're going to go down by the gymnasium there in a tiny little space there where you won't be bothering anyone. So basically, I was shunned in a way. And the only reason I wasn't fired is because they couldn't fire me. And so what am I going to do? I mean, I can't stay at this place, but we have 4 kids, a mortgage, home. I'm at the top of my pay grade there. Didn't know what to do. And but it was getting to me. And one day, a few months later, this is after a few months of this, I remember driving into work and I could just see my self-esteem had been hammered by this, really hit. Anyway, I had some ideas, but nothing worked out. So this was 1981 now, October. There was the first gathering of helping professionals in Subud. And it took place in a little town in the south of France, Benex. And I felt I had to go to that. And so I went, and there were various professions, uh, therapists, counselors, social workers, teachers, 2 international helpers. Uh, I think it was about 16 to 18 of us there. I was the only North American there, interestingly enough. And so during that time, I forget we were together a week or something. Um, I had this dream. And in this dream, Bapak came to me and told me what I was going to do next, what my job would be next. And I said to him after he told me, I said, and what about training? Because that's what I've been doing. I've been creating training programs. Um, I'd also had a part-time, very part-time private practice outside the government. For 12 years, I never had more than 4, and I usually maybe had 1 client. So that didn't seem like a viable thing. But Buffett told me what I'm going to do. And then I said, but what about training, Bappa? And Buffett says, that's okay too. So when I woke up in the morning, all I could remember was, what about training, Bappa? That's okay too. I could not remember what he told me my work was going to be. And I knew that's what it had to be. I had to have faith. It was a matter, a test of faith. And so I came back to my job after that. Wonderful experience with helping professionals around the world in Subud. Came back to my job, and after I was there 4 months, I had a leave. I had a 6-week leave to finish my master's degree. I hadn't completed my master's. And so on the second day of that leave, I was outside in the garden. My wife called, said, it's for you. I came in, and this woman's on the phone, and she introduced herself, and I recognized her. She's a very well-known, very highly respected therapist in Vancouver. I'd never met her before. And she said, I'm wondering if you would work with me. And I said, like what, like assistant therapist or she said, no, it's my therapist. Really? Someone who I'd worked with basically had told her about me, and so I didn't have an office at that point. She lived on the west side of Vancouver, a very lovely, beautiful home, and she taught at the university too. And I was looking at this possible office space over on the east side of Vancouver, kind of a dingy area. So I said, well, I am looking at an office. So she said, where is it? I told her over the east side. She said, no, I don't go past a certain street. I'm not going over there. she said, listen, my office has got two chairs, a therapist chair and a client chair. I sit in the therapist chair. The client sits in the client chair. You come, you sit in the therapist chair. I'll sit in the client chair, and we'll work out of my office. So, in a way, as many women, one of the best things sometimes about women is they don't get caught up in roles as much as us men do. The role, they're more in the relation. What's the relationship here? So, and then she started she was part of a group of therapists, been together for quite a while. And anyway, at the end of the first session, she showed me around the place, beautiful home. And there was this one place, an office space that it had boxes in it. This was before computers, and it's a converted garage. I said, "What's this space?" She told me it's for we keep our group of therapists keep our files here. I said, "Oh," and I thought, this would be a nice office for me. So when I was leaving, I said, "That office, any chance of you of renting that?" She said, "No, no, that's just for us to store our stuff." I said, "Okay." I went home and I was tired after that first session. I laid down and voiced my voice and said, "Get up, call her, ask her again if you can rent that space." I know that's not my nature. Like I'm not that, you know what I mean? I don't push usually. I'm not pushy, not at all usually. And no, no, this is wrong. This is all wrong. She's my client. I can't. This is, crazy. I lay down again, get up, call her again. Get up, call her. So I get up and I said, about the office, yeah. If there's any way I can rent that office, I'd be really grateful. She said, let's talk about it after our next session. So when I showed up, even before the next session, she said, I've decided I'm going to rent that to you. I like your character. And that's beautifully, that's such a beautiful gift from her. So I worked out of there for, I think, 3 years till I got another office. Meanwhile, she started to refer therapists in her group to as clients for me. She said, you should work with this guy. Um, so after my 6 weeks, I had not done one bit of work on my master's thesis, but I had 13 new clients. And I realized that's my path. That's what it is. That's how I'm getting out of this job. And that became my work, my own private practice.
Hmm.
So, and Bapak was part of that. So, yeah,
Is that still going on?
yes, yeah, I still have a practice. I uh, yeah, I still have a practice. I also created a counseling institute as well that granted counseling diplomas, and I did that, ran that and my wife, she did all the administration for, I guess, for 9 years. And so I was teaching as well, and private practice. And then maybe about 4 years after I started my private practice, I thought, I sort of had a prayer, a request to God, and that was, what can I do that's truly, truly, truly transformational for people, and also where I can really grow myself. And after 2 years, that was answered. That prayer was answered. And I was shown that I need to do workshops, personal growth workshops for the public. And so basically, those were something where that, I mean, really just one extraordinary experience after another in those workshops, um, which I did until 3 years ago, or I ended those. But in terms of my counseling institute, but mainly through those workshops, another 50 people came into Subud. So yeah, and I think the right people were directed to me, not just me. It's the right people. It's like when the work I had at this institute, it was the right, there were a lot of young people hungry for spiritual awakening, and so it's not that I was special in that way. I think uh, just the conditions were right for it. And I had people come to my workshop, and people would come with everything under the sun, things that they hadn't been able to work out. But often there was a spiritual thing. I remember one woman came and she said, "I'm there to work on grieving the death of my mother. I haven't really fully grieved it." And she had this process in the workshop and grieved it. And the next morning, I thought she would be complete, but she seemed a little irritated. And I asked her what was going on. She said, "I'm not finished. I need to do more work." And I said, "Well, I thought that seemed pretty complete yesterday." She said, "No, there's something else." And I said, "What's that?" She says, I have more grief." And I said, "What is it?" "My separation from God. That's what I have to work on in this group. My separation from God, my grief around that." So, I mean, that's right up my alley, right? uh, and and at the end of that weekend, she said, would you be willing to meet with me and talk to me about God?" And so I did. And then basically she then she went and met with the women helpers and was open and still very active in Vancouver. So I was blessed, very fortunate, Rahman, very blessed, very fortunate to be given so many things. Yeah. And above all, of course, all my good fortune, of course, is the Ladiha. I mean, that's really that's it. That's the foundation of everything. Really,
Yeah.
absolutely, that's the foundation. That's really it. And and the experience of the Ladiha gave me such faith in working with people because I know that we all have deep inside us. I know what we have. I know we have the greatest resource possible inside. So I know that. So when, I can sense that in people. And so I don't tell them that you've got this great resource,
Yeah.
but in their process, wherever they go, I don't really have a model that I apply to everyone. I don't. I just try and discover what's right for each person. But if someone gives up or someone's stuck, I know that there's more there. I know that there's more within them, and that's really helped me in my work. Is that and it also gave me great patience with people, uh, because I've certainly needed patience, enormous amount of patience to be able to really experience my light ahead, you know?
Mhm. So any other experiences that you feel you would like to talk about?
Oh, well, I was in IH for 4 years, international help,
International, yeah, okay.
2014 to 2018. And that was an incredible blessing. That was a new experience. And it was filled with challenges, filled with learning. I was part of a group of 18 international helpers, 9 men, 9 women. And it's a no leader group, or it's a all leader group. And so that for me is because I've worked with groups for years and years, that was fascinating. How are we going to work as a group when we're all together? How are we going to make decisions? How is there going to be equality in the group? There's some very powerful, accomplished people in that group. My goodness, sort of leaders in their own industry, and uh,
Who was in that group?
Matthew Moyer, psychiatrist,
Mhm.
highly respected. Saklan, what's his name? My Saklan, Norwegian guy, head of operations in Russia for a huge engineering company, I think, Suzanne Renna, uh, basically running one of the Harvard counseling programs. Arifin Conrad, um, highly accomplished human being, plus spiritually developed as well. And Nahum, if you know Nahum, Israeli, brilliant guy.
Are there any experiences that kind of stand out in your work with that group?
Many, many. Um, uh, well, one was, I know Ibu. Ibu saw us twice or three times. He met with us. We really felt blessed. At one point she said, you're not there to solve conflict, to resolve conflict. Your task is to awaken souls of the members. And uh, and so not long into our tenure, we have a call from a country. All of the national helpers and national committee have resigned help.
Which
Uh,
which year was this?
which year?
Which year? Yeah.
2015 or 16. And so there we go. Off we go to this country for, I don't know what it was, 10 days. And that's right. They'd all resigned, and there'd been issues, unresolvable property issues as well. And what are we going to do? And we don't have a conflict resolution model that we follow or anything. We just have to be guided. Uh, and so we were guided. And by the end of those 10 days, there was a new national committee and there were new national helpers. All those things being finally decided at a general meeting for the country 2 days before we left. And we tested in front of them and they voted. But to get there, quite a process. The people we had to meet uh, and meeting some people in a small group, and then a lot of people one-on-one every day. Every day we worked and received, I guess, in a way. And not that we had any overwhelming received, just we kind of knew, okay, next step. Okay, now this step, now next step. just one step at a time, and it kind of unfolded. Very, very difficult, though, very difficult, especially when people really are feeling, you know, antipathy towards each other and right mistrust. And but we had a number of things like that in our group. There were countries people said, "Help, come," you know. And we managed, I would say, we were guided. I don't think there was anything really that nothing was perfect, but there was nothing really stuck in any of those visits. Nothing stayed stuck. And the we had a trip to Cuba where there was another country, there was conflict. And there was a large membership in the interior, and then there's membership in Havana. And I think the people in the interior thought that the Havana people are always getting the positions, and and this came up again, and we decided, well, we'll go to the interior and meet with the people in the interior rather than having them come to Havana, which is, a 19-hour bus ride or something for them. So we go to Havana, and these members up there, they're ready to, they're going to, we're going to have to be accountable here. Why did we choose such and such a Havana person for such and such a position? We get there, have a little bite to eat, and then we get this message saying, it's from the Communist Party in Cuba. Before you go to your meeting tonight, please drop by this house address. Signed members of the Communist Party. So we go over to this house, and it's just a normal house. It belongs to the mother of one of the three guys that are there. And they say, we understand there might be some trouble tonight in your meeting. How do they find out? Well, they know everything, I guess. And we're here to make sure that doesn't happen. And we're what? I mean, well, so I think we said, can we just basically discuss this on our own here for a minute? So, because, he said, we've heard there's some trouble brewing. And so we talked about it. And we decided, okay, well, we won't have a meeting tonight. We'll just have Latihan and testing. Forget the meeting, every Latihan and testing. So anyway, we went back. We said, I think we'll be okay. And they said, okay, but we're here all night. Just to let you know that if you need us, we're here. So we did. We went over to the facility. And there in Cuba, you want to have a meeting, you go through the government, any meeting. In your community even, you have to go through a government person. So we went and did Latihan, a unique place to do Latihan. The men did Latihan on the roof of this building, outdoors at night. It was nighttime. And there were two people in Cuba that were really very charismatic men who were kind of at odds with each other. But it was very interesting. So we did Latihan, and during the Latihan, once I opened my eyes, and here were these two men. Their eyes are both closed, standing right beside each other doing the Latihan. It was like, oh yes, the Latihan. We're all one when we're in the Latihan. There is no separation. There is no conflict. And then we just met with people after that. Over a couple of days, we met with different people. We did meet with people, but that was a very interesting experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was wonderful to be part of a group though that really came together, really with great harmony, and we found a way to have our meetings so that everyone had a voice. It just wasn't the loudest one, right? Because some of these members in that group are used to they just they're used to having the floor. So we had to create a system where that wasn't permitted. That there had to be, you had to take turns, like in kindergarten, you had to take turns. And at first, some of the men mainly didn't like that. It's like, no, I've got something spontaneous is happening. I need to say it right now, right? Uh, so after a while, and I was facilitating that to begin with. I didn't just be a facilitator, though. I said, no, I'm going to put my hand up at times when I want to say something. I'll go in line with everybody else. But no, that was good. That was good. And oh, I had one funny experience. We have time
Okay, yeah,
at the world at the in Freiburg at the end of our term, the very last laddie hand. And in terms of the 9 men IHs, we didn't plan who would do any test, who would do the testing, what questions we test. Just trusted whoever was moved to test would do it. So on the last day, I think Arifin and I were the only 2 men who kind of moved to ask some questions. So we did. We asked these questions, and then we couldn't wait around. And I told the men this, we can't really talk to you because we're going to meet with Ibu. Ibu's going to be waiting for us for them to talk to the men and women. Okay. So that day later, I began to hear this rumor that Ibu was in the room behind the curtain when I was asking my question, and she was giving me the questions. Ibu was giving me the questions. She was behind the curtain. And oh my God, I thought that is so bizarre. Uh, and then I thought, I wonder how many men think this, you know? And I thought, well, there's one man I could trust who's probably the most down-to-earth guy when I've met in Subud, Lucian Parcells. You know, Lucian?
yeah, yeah,
You know, he's, boy, he's a grounded guy. He's a man of reason, you know? So I had lunch with him the next day, and I said, Lucian, there's this thing going around about, Eva was feeding me these questions behind the curtain. And I said, I mean, what, that sounds so bizarre to me. He said, hold on now, hold on. Do you want to hear my experience? I said, yeah. I could hear her. I could hear the questions before you asked them. I said, really? Yeah. I could hear Ibu asking the question. No, I still, anyway, that was a very kind of a very bizarre way to end my term, right?
yeah,
So, but it was a blessing. And as Ibu said, everybody's an international helper. In a way, you can be a group helper, regional helper, national helper, and international helper once you're a helper. And the other thing, Rahman, is, I've served in many different roles: group helper, group chair, regional helper, regional chair, national helper, national helper twice, international helper. I'm regional helper again. And I've received more gifts personally than I think anything I've ever given in those roles. It's almost like if when we give, we get, I think Bapak said you get 10 times back what you give, you know?
yeah.
And I think that this is a plug I'm making here in this thing, asking people to really, really be selfish and love themselves and work for Subud. And that's the way to love yourself and to get gifts for yourself. So I just want to really encourage people to serve and yeah.
I don't have any other questions, but if you have anything else you'd like to add, or any other experiences, whatever.
No, I think I'll stop there, Rahman. And thank you for inviting me. You've been very patient with me. And but
I
uh,
thank you.
yeah, but thank you. You asked me more than once, and so thank you. And yes, are you fasting now too?
Say that again.
Are you doing the Ramadan fast?
No, not this time.
Okay. So the well, I am, and so it's a good time to meet, I think, to share when I'm fasting. So
Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording
okay.
unless you have something else you want to say.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Rahman.
Okay. Thank you.